Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
I am super excited. I'm going to launch my new book in October. Can I ask you a favor as a listener of the Charge Podcast? My new book, Cultivate Positive Culture, 10 Actions to Faithful Living, is coming out in mid-October. My goal is to launch this book as a bestseller, and I need your help. Would you be interested in being on my book launch team? All you have to do is go to bit.ly/CPC launch team. Now, it is case sensitive, so the best thing would be go to chargepodcast.com and you'll find the link at the top of our page. Register your name and email, and we'll send you all the details about our upcoming book launch. We will also be giving all launch team members special freebies that no one else will get. Since you're helping me, I want to help you by giving you these freebies. Now, here's a short description of the book. Lloyd, a truck driver for Forward Trucking Inc., has a random encounter with death while making his way back home. Lloyd, who is short on faith and options, finds himself in the largest downward spiral of his life. He meets an unexpected traveler who sees something in him that Lloyd couldn't find on his own. Together, through a new sense of faith and reason, Lloyd discovers his life's calling. Doesn't that sound exciting? I am so excited about this launch of this book. I appreciate your help. Remember to register for the book launch. Just go to chargepodcast.com, and at the top of the page, you'll see a link where you can register to be on the book launch team. Thanks for your help. Let's get to our podcast now. Are you frustrated and stressed out with your professional and personal life? The Charge Podcast will help you get recharged. Yes, we are in the last 4 months of 2020. For some of us, 2020 has seemed to be a very long year. To close out the third quarter guest list, we found some interesting people who will share their journey to finding their purpose, passion, positivity, and inspiration in living a high-performance life. Make sure to listen each week and see how you can apply the lessons they share with us as Chargers in our own life. The goal of the Charge Podcast is to help you realize what is most important in your life. Chargers are committed to finding how each day they can make their life better by the willingness to learn, grow, and become the person they were meant to be. I think this quote sums it up best that I coined. Finding your purpose is God's gift to you. Sharing your purpose is your gift to God. You made a great choice in listening to this podcast. Remember, the podcast is named Charge after my mantra. Create habits around real goals every day. Let's get recharged in this podcast to influence a positive culture in our life each day. Are you ready? Chargers, welcome to the Charge Podcast. We're so glad to have you back this week, and we bring you great guests each week, and this week we did it again. Today we've got Jennifer Longmore. She's a leading authority on soul purpose, an elite business coach to enlighten entrepreneurs, and is a sought-after media personality. She's a 3-time best-selling author and is world-renowned for her laser-like clarity in seeing into the depths of your soul and bridging your connection to the universal consciousness. For more than 15 years, she has served clients in permanently shifting the limiting beliefs and patterns that prevent them from being who they really are so they can live their most abundant, aligned, and accelerated soul's journey. With over 30,000 soul purpose sessions, including the who's who's of actors, professional athletes, CEOs of leading companies, and other influential luminaries, Jennifer continues to offer these high-level sessions to souls who are really committed to shine their light. Jennifer, that is so great to have you on the Charge Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. How can I not be pumped up after listening to your energy just transmitting through the airwaves right now? That's fantastic.
Well, it is wonderful to have you on the podcast, and we're going to get in a little bit of that soul journey and what you do. But I always ask each guest this question. It's my mantra. It's called charge. Create habits around real goals every day. What habit or habits do you think has led success in your life?
I have a lot. That's a great question. But I've been a proud member of the 5 a.m. club for a really long time. I really enjoy that. I've learned that if I start my day focused on me, then I'm way better to serve my clients, my son, my husband. I just show up as a different person. And then with that, I do journaling because I have to get in tune with the things that I can't see. Journaling allows me to see my blind spots, but it also allows me to see how far I've come. So I have clarity about where I'm going.
Well, it's so interesting you say that because I think the Chargers think sometimes I set up my guest because it's amazing. My number one response is that early morning routine. And for some, it's 5, can be 5:30. This morning when my alarm went off, I didn't want to get up, but I did. And it made such a difference because I knew I got a pretty strong day ahead, a lot to do. But that becomes the time that I'm really able to focus, like you said, on myself. So it's just so amazing that comes up. Chargers, I hope you're hearing that because that becomes one of those things. It's a habit, and it's one of those things. The first day, it takes a lot of work. And then once you make it a routine, you don't really want to miss it. And that becomes the key there. So thanks for sharing that. Now, why don't we talk a little bit? You talk about your soul's journey. And of course, with that, you do some business coaching and working with entrepreneurs as well as athletes and movie stars, actors. What does that really mean? Because for some of us, we may be trying to say, what does that consciousness really mean when we're trying to find that soul journey?
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that most of us, when we come here, are constantly trying to answer the question of why am I here? What am I here to learn? What am I here to contribute and master? What's my unique contribution to the planet? And that would be the easiest way, I guess, for me to explain what a soul's journey is. So my job is to help people unravel all of the things that keep them from the truth of who they really are, which we're all just a big ball of light, right? When we come out of the womb, we're this big ball of innocent light. And then with a series of parenting snafus and programming from school and, all kinds of things, we start to get taken away from who we really are. And we start living a life based on those untruths or things that just aren't really in alignment with us. So it's my job to help people get clear on what's true for you. And then how do we line up your life and your actions to be in alignment with that?
Yeah, what a great thing because it's really about us finding who do we want to be and then following that path. And like you said, so many things takes us off course. And that's where some of the morning routines, that journaling that you talked about can be some of those keys of really developing that, but helping you to reach that area. Now, one thing that I was thinking about is how can we instantly shift because we get perceptions and we kind of get blocks that hold us back. And it really stops us from making those quantum leaps whenever we choose. What would be some steps that you would tell people, those perceptions, those blocks, when they get them, how can they really move themselves forward to get those quantum leaps?
That's a great question. I think we can expect to have the blocks. We can expect to have the upper limits. We know it's going to happen. I call it expansion hangover, where when we're getting ready to expand, we either contract just before the expansion or just after. And I'll explain what that means. So each of us has a pattern when we're growing. Some people get sick right before they're about to achieve their big goal, or they get sick right after and it knocks them on their butt. Some people have some sort of personal, I'll say, chaos that comes into their life every single time they declare that they're going to up level. Some people have other people that bring chaos to their doorstep every single time they say they're going to up level. And there's no right or wrong in that. It's just that we each have a pattern. And additionally, when we grow and we finally achieve the thing we say we want to achieve, we have this feeling of like being deflated almost, because it was never about the goal. It was about who we became on the journey. So people think there's going to be all this confetti that drops from the sky. There's going to be a big party. There's going to be maracas and people are going to be, dancing in the streets. And then it's like, oh, So I crossed this income goal, or, oh, I finally achieved this, whatever. And so in anticipation of that, we need to come up with our own game plan of how am I going to stay out of my own way when I'm achieving my goals? Because I can guarantee that my monkey mind's always going to try and keep me safe and always trying to scream danger, danger. So how do I silence the voice of the monkey mind so that the higher part of me is running the show?
Yeah, it's so true because, it's about hitting that success, but then when people hit it, it actually a lot of times becomes that empty feeling. I'm going through a process right now where, really positive intelligence, I'm very much in a positive culture, that positive intelligence, positive mindsets that I talk about and speak about. And that's one of the things. I've got a book coming out this fall. And one of the things I talk about is cultivating that positive culture. And I talk about the 10 actions of faithful living. We have to be the ones to find it, because we have to be able to overcome those roadblocks that you spoke about. We could go so deep there, but I'm going to kind of leave that, because I think the part, though, that really sets us up is in this next question that we talked about, we really want to get into. And I think this is a block that people have that will really help them. And that really is those, you kind of call them 5 massive money blocks that keep people from thriving in their business. And I've got a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast and other people that do too. But I think we have to realize that we do have those money blocks that's there. So how can they quickly shift them once for all? And we'll kind of spend some time there. And you've got kind of 5 massive money blocks. Let's talk about that some.
Yeah. So to give you a bit of my background, I used to work as a forensic investigator for many, many years. And so my brain looks for patterns, right?
Yeah.
My brain just naturally looks for clues. So when I was doing all the soul purpose coaching, I started getting people to ask me to coach them in business. And all the time I've been doing soul purpose coaching, the number one thing people would say as to why they weren't living their purpose, even though they kept pretending they didn't know what it was because they said they didn't have the money, or somehow it was tied into money. I can't leave my partner until they pay me back, or I owe my partner, so I have to stay until they pay them back, or, I don't get paid enough, or, it was always something to do with money. And it doesn't mean that that wasn't true for them. But they also had already been deciding that they were going to be poor in the future. Like if I said to you right now, Gary, I'm having a retreat in France next year and would love for you to join me. And you'd say, oh, I can't come, I can't afford it. Why have you already decided in 12 months that you're not going to have the money for this thing that you claim to want to do, right? We do this all the time. So when I started business coaching, the same thing. I would see entrepreneurs watch cat YouTube videos all the time, or they just do all the low dividend stuff, right? But give themselves the illusion that they were busy so that they could rationalize and kind of satiate the monkey mind by saying, see, I'm doing something. See, look, I'm doing something, right? So I got curious and I said, okay, well, what's really going on here? Money's getting thrown under the bus an awful lot. So it can't be about the money. It has to be about something else. So that's what I'm about to share now, because once we have awareness about what we're actually afraid of, and people listening today will probably hear more than one thing in what I say, then we can deal with it. When we don't know what we don't know, we can't create a game plan for it. So one of the fears is fear of power. So money is actually influence, but we've been taught to believe that money is power. And so if we have had power used against us, or we've seen other people use their power against other people, or we buy into that whole notion of money's the root of all evil, that kind of vibe that we hear a lot about, then although we secretly, and maybe even in small circles, say, I want a lot of money, I want to be able to do A, B, and C, to actually declare it, we are more concerned about whether we're going to misuse our power or whether someone's going to try and take our power away from us. So we stay in this kind of neutral zone. We have just enough to get by, but not too much to be noticed and potentially have it corrupt us. But when we understand money is influence, it buys us a seat at the table. It gives us a bigger voice. It allows us to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, right? And stand behind causes that we're passionate about, or create a life that actually allows us to be more effective for other people, or invest in supplements that keep our vibe high for our clients. Like whatever it is, when we understand its influence, then we can more readily let it in.
That's so interesting because the challenge becomes is really like you talked about is so much back to mindset that I get into some is how much it blocks us and those mental blocks stop us from progressing forward. And I've got a friend, you kind of identified a friend when you're a podcast host, you get to always have this friend that's got a problem. You kind of talked about my friend here a little bit early on,
Yeah.
that you keep yourself busy, but you're really not progressing forward for what you want.
Totally. Yeah, we've all been guilty of that. The second thing is we have a fear that we're not worthy enough. I can't even tell you the amount of entrepreneurs I talk to who say, I don't know if I'm qualified enough to do X, or I don't know if I should offer Y. And it's because they don't believe they're qualified enough or that they are worthy enough, right? To charge more, to have a book, to be on stage, to do whatever the things are that they want to do. And naturally, worth and money kind of go hand in hand, right? So the degree that we amp up our self-worth determines the degree to which we can allow more money in. And it doesn't mean that someone's got really bad self-worth if they don't have the money that we think they should have. It just means that there's an opportunity to look at the correlation and also watch our language and look for every time we're saying, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough support. I don't have enough, I'm not thin enough. I hear this a lot from women. Oh, when I lose 10 pounds, I'll start doing video or I'll start getting on stage, right? There's always a condition. When we remove those conditions, then we're free to see things as they are, and then we get to choose them.
Well, again, my friend has some of these same issues. Jennifer, you're just nailing that person. But it's amazing how self-worth really does contribute to success and failure. And I think that becomes the real key as we're looking at things is we have to realize we have to be the one to change first to be able to move forward. And to me, that becomes a real key there. So very interesting kind of how you've kind of framed this up. And then with your background, you can see why that science that was so important to you to find out what was these challenges that's there. So go ahead, share some more.
Totally. Okay, so this is relevant. This one I'm going to share is relevant to my friend, which is that we have this thing called the tall poppy syndrome. So we don't want to grow too tall. We don't want to grow above the crowd because we'll be the first to get chopped down in the poppy field. Some people say this is a big thing for folks living in Australia. And yes, I would say it is because I have a lot of clients that are from Australia. But I actually would say it's global in that we try to take the good enough path. Gay Hendricks talks about it in The Big Leap, right? We can never have it all. Our brain tells us we can never have it all. Because as soon as our life looks too good, it's too offensive to other people. And then they start to attack us. We see this in celebrity culture. We can take Britney Spears as an example. And I only use that. I know it's an older example, but it's one that I think most people know about, which is she was new on the scene. Oh my goodness, let's build her up. We want her to be successful. Then she became successful. She had it all. And then everyone started coming at her and wanted to start taking her down. Then we took her down and then we're like, oh, now we got to nurture this wounded bird again. We got to build her back up. This is a collective culture that we have, irrespective of race and gender and so on. That's just something that we tend to do in more westernized cultures. And so if we have just enough to look successful but not too successful, then it's safer to be in that good enough place, right? To have like 75% of what we want as opposed to 100% of what we want.
Yeah. So with that, is some of that, do you think you call it kind of tall poppy syndrome? Is some of that too? Does that imposter syndrome come in some with them that they won't go there because of the success?
Imposter syndrome, I would say, would fall in more into the I'm not worthy enough. Like, I don't know if I'm worthy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Which
what
is
I was
a very
kind of thinking
common thing.
too. Yeah. I was thinking that may fit there too. But so for some, it's a fear of that there'll be too much and then they'll be taken down. And I can see that on that picture. And then of course, some of the challenge you have, some people get there. And of course, then it's like, how do I stay there? I'm sure in that area also. Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Sure. Another one that so you kind of talk about money block, the fear of not worthy enough, the tall poppy syndrome. Number 4.
Yeah. This one is the fear of responsibility. So we tend to already feel responsible, more responsible than we should for other people. And as business owners, we tend to feel responsible for our clients' results. And yes, we want to show up and honor our appointments and honor our contracts with our appointments and bring what we said we're going to bring. But we somehow attach ourselves to their results in a way that actually does a disservice to both sides. People can't really grow when we absorb all of the responsibility for their growth on us, because then they don't have to do any of the heavy lifting. They never actually get served because nobody's actually teaching them how to fish, right? They're just constantly fishing for them. But what happens is people say, well, geez, if I had to work this hard to have what I have now, and I already feel too responsible for the handful of clients I have now, how can I possibly allow in 5 new clients or 5 more clients when I already feel overwhelmed now? And that usually is tied into people feeling like they're needing to caretake too much for other people. And so, and then the other piece of this is that people are afraid of having too much because there'll be handouts, right? People will be shoving their hand out saying, okay, great. Like I have a client from the Philippines and she makes a lot of money, but the more money she makes, the more her family magically finds out that she's making more in the Philippines, and they start asking her for more and more, and their spending starts to go up, and what became her just helping them out to enjoy the life that they have becomes a deeper entitlement. So then she bottlenecks because she doesn't want to make more because she knows it's going to disappear anyways. So the more she feels like she's already working hard enough for that money. That's just an example, but I know this happens a lot for people. And so again, they kind of decide to have, enough to be comfortable, more than enough to get by, but not so much that people will start, putting their hands out and saying, well, must be nice to be you. Haven't you heard about how much I'm struggling?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And you see that in areas, you see that with people that after they've sell their business. I sold my first business in 2012, my primary business at that time that I was in, and that responsibility comes in there. Plus I see it in our line of work, with coaching. You see that a lot, where people kind of take the responsibility because we want our clients to succeed so much that we take it that it's our responsibility to help them get there. And I can definitely feel what you're talking about, where they take the responsibility, but the problem is the client's not. So it's never going to move forward in that area and becomes that block. That's interesting.
Yeah. And someone like me, I don't want to hire someone that feels responsible for my stuff.
Yeah.
Because then they start smothering me. And, I've had coaches over the years, because that's another success tip, by the way, right? Always have a coach. But I've had coaches that have just been up my butt, basically, right? I'm like, get off me. I clearly I'm a quick start. I'm a quick follow through. Leave me be. I don't need you to babysit me. I did not ask for that. I asked for you to hold space for me to talk through my own stuff and come to my own conclusions, potentially show me how to do something that you've done that I haven't done yet. But other than that, it's actually very disempowering. And so coaches that tend to, it's interesting, because coaches that will take responsibility for their clients tend to constantly complain that they have non-ideal clients, but they don't understand their role in why it keeps happening. So a lot of those people do actually want to show up for themselves. But more importantly, people that are truly in their leadership energy don't want to be led. They want someone to lock arms with them. They don't need someone to hold their hand and tug them along and show them the way.
Yeah. Yeah. They need to be that process. They've got to do the process. They've got to go through the work. The key is, like you talked about, just you're able to talk it out. And so many coaches think they're the problem solver. Instead, they're really the questioner. It's how can they bring their best ideals out of their client? And it's tough because, of course, when you're used to doing as a coach, and that was one of my greatest struggles as I became a coach, because I was a doer, and now I'm on the coaching side. That role is totally different in that area. And it's the same way. And you may be saying, okay, I'm not a coach. So if you're listening, Chargers, the same thing is when you are a leader of a team, you are a coach, because you're coaching them. If you tell them everything to do, of course, they're going to go get that project done, but then they're right back to you. What's the next project? Instead, when they learn what needs to be done and they learn through that process, they, of course, then the next time know what to do and be able to move forward. Makes your job a lot easier as a leader. And that's one challenge as leaders even have, is they want to do it for their people and then expect them to just do it. And I think that's the key, is you've got to have them learn through that process. How about number 5?
Okay, you're going to love this one, because this isn't something people talk a lot about, but I've learned this in my own journey. So we have a fear of speed. Money creates speed. I know this because I used to hear this, and people would say, it's actually making your first million is the hardest. And I would say, well, why does it need to be that way? And then I had heard that once you make your first million, it's a lot easier to add zeros after that. I never really understood what that was, but years ago, I hired an agent to go and buy some property for me. And it was a 5-minute conversation. I sent him some money to go to auction to buy me some properties. And in a 5-minute phone call, I went from having nothing to having that $5,000 turn into $2 million of assets in 5 minutes of my time, doing nothing other than relentless delegation, basically. So what happened was, I called my friend right away. Oh my God, I just got, oh my God. She's like, you're a multimillionaire now. And I'm like, oh, and then I flopped back on my bed and I didn't feel good. It felt uncomfortable. I hadn't calibrated, right? So the outer had taken place, but I hadn't calibrated to that new reality. And what I realized was that money really does create speed. But then because we've been taught speed is a bad thing, that speed's actually dangerous. Don't ride your bike too fast, Jennifer. You're going to fall off and hurt yourself. Don't drive too quickly. You could kill yourself or others, right? And yes, that is true in real time, but we start to broad stroke it and think that anywhere speed shows up, that it's dangerous. The other side of speed is that, and I talked to actually one of my colleagues about this, and he said, oh my God, I used to slow down my video game play because I would win the game too quickly and it would become boring too quickly. So I would actually slow down and I'd purposely screw up my moves in the game because I wanted the game to last longer. So I would slow down the speed of that. So it's kind of two sides of that. But I think this is a big eye opener for a lot of folks, because some part of us knows that money creates speed, but either we don't know that we can handle it, or maybe something bad's going to happen. Maybe the rug's going to be pulled out from underneath us, or we forget that we don't ever have to be bored. Boredom in business is hilarious to me because I get there too, right? And we start to do really cute things. We're just so cute as human beings. And we, get too involved in other people's stuff, or we just scroll too much on social media. There's things that we do out of boredom instead of constantly living in the question of what's next. When we always just live in that question, we don't have to answer it, but we just are always available to have that question answered. Then we can allow things to speed up as much as possible, because we recognize that speed is a good thing. It's in support of us, and also that we can constantly handle whatever comes to us.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And so I've seen the parallels in my own life. I've seen parallels in other business owners' life that I've coached, people that I know, that fear of, it's going to go away. And instead of that, abundance. And then the challenge of, we don't really get to enjoy it, going back to some of your other massive money blocks, because it's always a scarcity versus an abundance type mindset. And I know each of these play into it, but I have to ask this one follow-up is with the consciousness. Of course, what I'm thinking is, as you become more aware and these things, as you're working with clients and working with people, of course, that helps them see it. But can you share, how does that play into it, and kind of the key to the solution?
Yeah, that's part of it. We can never deal with what we don't have awareness of, right? In the awareness, then we get to choose. And sometimes we choose not to deal with things even when we're aware of it, which is a lot of times why we don't want to know the truth of things, because then we know we can't unlearn the truth. But the other part of this is that everything has consciousness. We have consciousness, our business has consciousness, money has consciousness. And so if money is just neutral, it then only becomes the thing that we project onto it. So when we get clear on what we're projecting onto it, is it an enemy? Is it, a rug that's going to be pulled out from underneath us? Is it, emotionally unavailable to us, just like one of our parents were? I'm just making this up, but this is
Sure.
stuff that I see all the time, right? When we allow money, when we shift from money isn't on my side to, oh, money wants to be a part of my dream team. How can I constantly give money an important seat at my boardroom table to make my dreams come true? It has no other agenda but to help me make my dreams come true. Then how can I constantly be in support of money being able to do that for me, which means that I have to constantly work on staying out of my own way so that money can keep making more and more of my dreams come true. And that starts even for me. I have what I call a dreams come true list. So every year I write out, what dreams do I want money to help me make come true this year? And they have to really mean something to me. And at this stage of my life, my dreams are much different than they used to be. And a lot of it's more about who I want to become, or maybe people I want to meet, right? As opposed to acquiring anything. I'm kind of a minimalist, so I don't need a lot of things. But once I get clear on where I want money to go, then money can also go there.
Yeah. And it really allows you then to live the life that you want and to be able to move forward in the areas that you feel is most important. So you're able to kind of live in congruent with who you want to be.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways, Jennifer, we could go here, but we're kind of running up on that time. That always happens, it seems like, when I get into a really good conversation. So we'll have to have you back sometimes. But I really appreciate you sharing those money blocks, because I do feel, and the thing is, it doesn't matter if you're a business owner or if you're an individual that you're listening right now, you have those same money blocks that's there. And really congratulate you as that you really kind of identified that within your clients, because as you're speaking about it, I can see some of those challenges with some of my clients that I've had, and we've worked in different areas that now it's going to give me kind of a little bit of insight to maybe be able to tackle that a different way. So my friend, thanks you very much. But I want to ask you some questions, because we have a recharge round, we call it. And there's kind of my framework that I go around and I speak about and I share with audiences. One of them, you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'll let you kind of put it in the framework for yourself. How do you believe your mindset affects your daily living?
I think mindset affects everything, because our brain, especially our subconscious, is a stubborn little kid, and it always wants to be right. So whatever beliefs we're holding on to, that stubborn little kid is so determined to go out and prove itself right, that knowing that it's going to prove itself right, we might as well work on holding the thoughts that we actually do want to come true, so that we become more conscious co-creators as opposed to unconscious co-creators.
Great. How about, what do you do to bring energy into your life each and every day?
I start with journaling, making sure that I'm filling my cup first, because I can then serve from a cup that's overflowing. But I work out every day, in part because I want to release chemicals in my body that keep my brain happy and healthy, but also give me vitality. I invest in really high value supplements to make sure my vitality's up. I get vitamin D every day. So whether, if it's not sunny out, I have a lamp that actually does that for me. To, again, release the chemicals in my brain that I want. I mean, there's a ton of things I do, but I try to create a balance in my physical, emotional, mental, spiritual fields, right, to make sure that I'm in harmony.
And that's one reason I always ask that question, because I think people forget, they get so busy with their life that they forget you've got to bring the energy in. And I appreciate you sharing those examples, because it lets people realize, okay, there's more than what, because it's not, why do you exercise? Exercise definitely brings energy, but there's other ways to bring energy into your life too. And I think that's what's so important for people to hear. Share the number one connection or maybe a relationship that's made the biggest impact on your life.
I would say my relationship with myself, because I'm responsible for where I go. Right. It's not that I don't connect in with a higher power, and I don't, and my husband's very important to me and so on. But if I look at who's been with me my entire life, it's me. Right. And so I always want to be working towards being in right relationship with me.
Yeah. What a great message there, that so many people think outside, think of someone else, but what a great message to share with people that, take care of yourself. You're able to take care of a lot more people if you're taking care of yourself. And so many people forget
Mhm.
that. What advice has influenced you the most in your life?
I love that question because I mean, there's so much, but I will say the one of my most favorite books is called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And in that, he talks about four main principles, but the one main one is don't take things personally. And I think as business owners, we really need to live by that because what people see in us is a reflection of them, or we're reminding them of someone that they still have unfinished business with, or whatever the case is. And if we're always being puppeted by other people's opinions and not taking action on anything because we're afraid that we're going to offend someone or someone's going to feel bad or any of those things, we stay very, very small.
Yeah. And you mentioned one book. Is there another that you just spoke about there? And we'll share that in show notes. So if people want to look it up, they'll be able to. Is there another book that you would recommend to people and share why you love it?
I'm an avid reader. I've already read like 45 books this year. I think, well, one book that I recently read that I really enjoy is The Atomic Habits
Oh, yes.
by
James
James
Clear.
Clear. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
read that. I read that in January myself.
Yeah. I think that's one of those books you kind of have to read every quarter. I
Yeah.
like having books that blow my mind so much, or I know there's so many nuggets in there that I'm not even absorbing that I have no choice but to return to it in like 3 months to make sure that I'm, taking it in.
Yeah, that's a good one. I did the Audible as well as the other, and you bring up a good point. That's a good one that I could listen back to with the Audible side of
Mhm.
it. So, Chargers, if you listen out there, great book. I highly recommend it, along with Jennifer on that one. How about the last sentence? You've almost made it through the recharge round. Is what legacy do you want to leave the world?
Well, I really would like to have people be at peace with money and really use money as a tool to help them live their purpose. I'd love to see everyone really feeling and knowing that they're living on purpose and being at peace with money and allowing them to make their dreams come true.
Well, by you sharing today, you've helped somebody. We don't know who it is yet at this point, but somebody that listens, they're going to be able to go back and really kind of refocus, retool, or recalibrate their focus and be able to live on that purpose. And Jennifer, we just can't thank you enough for being on the Charge podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really been a pleasure.
Now, people are going to reach out to you and contact you. Do you mind sharing your website or how they can contact you, Jennifer?
Yeah. Well, if people want to go deeper into the money stuff I talked about today, I do have a freebie on my site, which is souljourneys.ca/money. And that way they can, I go into much more detail about these 5 areas and then give some really concrete examples of how to move through it. I spend an awful lot of time on Facebook, probably more than I should admit out loud, but I do have a free group on there called the Purpose Posse, which is for entrepreneurs that are, believing in something bigger and are here to really serve and help a lot of people. So I teach people how to scale their service-based businesses there. And I am on other social handles, but Facebook is really where I spend the most time.
Okay. So check that out. I will let my friend know about that souljourneys.ca. That's there. And her website, of course, is souljourneys.ca. We will have that in Charge podcast. So if you're running right now, cutting grass, doing something that's active while you're listening to the podcast, don't worry. They're all on show notes at chargepodcast.com where you can reach out to Jennifer. And Jennifer, I just want to thank you again for being on the podcast. What some great information. And I tell people, really think about that and go to it and get her free resource about those 5 massive money blocks, because those are affecting not only business owners, but individuals too, because you may have a regular job, but it's also creating some blocks for you to be able to take that next step that you want to take in your life. And really, it's about living our purpose is what we were talking about today. So thank you, Jennifer, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Chargers, I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope you right away take some action on what we talked about, because it's easy to listen to material, but it's harder to put it in action. So my suggestion for you, if you were active, you might want to come back and make a couple notes. or just tell yourself, what's one thing that you want to take from the podcast today? Like maybe looking up the free resource that Jennifer shared with us, or maybe it's about which roadblock or money block is stopping you, and decide what are you going to do to move forward in that. Chargers, I look forward to having you back next week at the same time, same place. Remember, like and share us and let other people know about our podcast. I can't wait to see you next week. Make it a great day.
This podcast is ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.